Hello, and welcome to the video. My name is Lex, and today I'm going to be drawing none other than my own sign, which is Libra. And you know what's really funny? I was brainstorming ideas for which animal I was going to use for Libra the night before I drew this, and I settled on an elephant. Does that look like an elephant to you? No, because I sat down at my drawing board and immediately forgot that I planned on doing an elephant, which is, for some reason, elephants are also symbolized by Libra. I'm not sure why, but I decided to go with a barn swallow instead, and I actually have a personal reason for that. Not that they're a particularly Libran animal, because they're birds, but when I was very, very young, well, I mean, 5th grade. 5th grade is pretty young, I'd say. That's like, what, I don't know, 10 years old, 11? I found a little itty-bitty barn swallow outside of my apartment. Actually, my friend's apartment, but that's relative. But I found a little itty-bitty barn swallow who had fallen out of the nest, and this thing was little. There had been a storm, and he didn't have any feathers. He was just a pink little ball of meh. You know, baby birds are not ugly. They definitely glow up, that's for sure. But yeah, so I found this little barn swallow. And normally now, being the person I am, I would take it to a rehabilitation center because we do have one actually pretty close to us, which is great. However, when I was a kid, I didn't know that. And so I took in this little barn swallow and I decided to raise it. And one thing to know about birds is that they actually imprint on people. So if you take in a little baby bird, they end up thinking that they belong to you or they like to be around you, and they have a little bit of a harder time adapting to the wild. Especially one that you get this young, but I took him in anyway, and it was actually a great experience. I loved this little bird. I named him Little Sprout. I don't know if Little Sprout was a boy or girl, but I always thought he was a boy. And, yeah, I spent a while with this bird, and I cannot exactly remember how long, but, long enough for him to grow all of his feathers in, and he could fly just fine, and I would take him on flying practice, and he would always land back on my shoulder, because you know that imprinting thing that birds do, that's not great, but you know I didn't know that because I was a little kid, and I would feed him mealworms and waxworms, because waxworms, even as a kid, I knew they were very fatty, and they were good for putting on weight, and that's what little baby birds need. And I would feed him stuff like that, and I would take him out, and I would feed him other things like that, and it was just a really fun time. You know, part of being a young kid is figuring out what works, what doesn't work, and just having that sort of discovery on your own. My parents had no idea what to do with this bird. They let me keep it because, you know, they didn't know. But it did come time where actually my dad was like, you know, you can't keep the bird because, yes, it is illegal to keep songbirds or birds that are any birds, really. It's illegal to keep birds without a permit in the state of Minnesota. And so we decided that it would probably be best to let him go off into the wild. Mind you, he was imprinted on me, and the funny thing about keeping birds when they're that young, barn swallows have a very distinct call. It's like a little chatter. And Little Sprout never learned how to speak barn swallow. I don't know how important this was to his survival in the wild, but he never learned how to speak barn swallow. He kind of just screeched, like a bat out of hell. He screeched really loud. And I don't know. I don't know what was up with that. But one day I had him outside, and he was sitting on the deck sill, and 2 other barn swallows flew up because we had barn swallows all over the place in our apartment, around our apartment. And they flew up and they sat on the sill next to him, and you know, they're chittering and chattering and doing their own thing. And Little Sprout was just losing his mind, screeching at them and doing his little hops and everything. And finally they flew away, and I'm like, oh, that sucks. Maybe he will never be able to go back into the wild because he doesn't like his own kind. But then a couple of sparrows flew up, and he seemed to really take to the sparrows, and he flew off with them. It's not impossible for a bird to be raised by a human and do okay in the wild. Usually it's a slower process, and they come back to the person, and they go back to the wild, and they go back and forth for a while until they settle on the wild. because that's where they belong ultimately. But he never came back, and I really do hope he's okay, and I still wonder about that today. But raising him was great, and I really, really loved it. I loved that little bird, and since then I have found other little birds on the ground, and I've taken them all to the rehabilitation center because I'm a wise adult now, and I know that I can't raise every little baby thing that I find. But yeah, that's the story of Little Sprout, and I'll always remember that. That's just one of the crazy things about being a kid, because I had similar experiences too. Finding birds, finding other things, and trying to raise them, and sometimes it just doesn't work out, and you gotta let them go, you know? It's part of growing up. I felt like a mother, though, leaving that thing, or like letting them fly off. But yeah, it was really, really cool. And if you have barn swallows around where you live, that's great. Because, one, they are major pest control. Those things eat so many mosquitoes. When they fly around, they glide, they're gliders. But when they glide around, they're always eating bugs in the sky, so be known that swallows are good to have around. And they're not obnoxious. They are considered a songbird. They're my favorite songbird for obvious reasons, but they're not an obnoxious songbird. Like, sparrows, they kind of just screech. I don't consider them a songbird. They're just like they're annoying. But swallows are very pretty. And they seem very happy and chatty, a lot like Libras are, actually. Libras are supposed to be happy and chatty, at least. Stereotypically. But yeah, that's my little bird story. I have a lot of bird stories, but that's definitely my favorite one. Oh, it is not the only bird story I've told so far. I had a pet cockatiel a long time ago, and if you want to go check out my bird video, it's one of my very first ones, so the audio is going to be crappier, but it's a bird story. Kooky cookie. And I know my little swallow guy is looking really chubby right now. He's adorable. He is, So the thing that birds do is when they get cold, they puff up their feathers, and by doing that, they trap a bunch of their body-heated air in between their feathers, like little warm air sacs, and that's what keeps them warm. So a lot of times in the wintertime, the birds that do stick around in the winter, you'll see them all puffed up in trees, and that's because they're just trying to preserve some heat. And that's what this little barn swallow is supposed to be doing. And I do realize I made him a little too chubby and a little too long because it was really fun to draw and chubby animals are cute. But I do fix it later. The end result, but I forgot to record it. So the very end result of this video is the official, not so overly chubby barn swallow. I suppose the chubbiness actually kind of works, though, if you think about it. Libra stereotype. Now, it's a stereotype, my friends. Stereotype. Libras are known to be lazier out of the zodiacs and tend to be a little chubbier. Stereotype, my dude. Like, come on. But I decided that since I was doing stereotypes of all the other signs, I could not neglect that one as well. So we got our cute little chubby little barn swallow, and he's adorable, and he's in the sunlight having a good old time. Getting the shine on his wings. Libra people like pretty things, and they like balance and order. Not quite as much as Virgo people do, though. But yes, they like pretty things, and they like things that flow well. Libras are supposed to be musical, but I don't know, if you hear my singing voice, it is not very pretty. So, we win some, we lose some, right? And fun fact, we're the only sign out there in the zodiac to have an inanimate object as its final symbol. And you made it to the end of the video, so if you liked it, consider, well, liking it and subscribing if you really liked it, and I'll see you in the next video. See you, bye.